Hey, we're live.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Just 1 second. I just want to capture one more point on one of our last topics. Complete open PR.
Cool. I posted the, Robert is asking to be promoted. Oh, I'm not the host anymore. That's why I can't.
Yep, I just did it.
Okay,
Oh,
cool.
hi, Robert.
I was
I'm like,
about
I
to
don't
say
know
something and I
what-
was like, wait a sec, I'm the host. I guess I have to do it.
Cheers, guys.
No.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm just going to paste the link to the minutes if people can add themselves in there too. That would be great.
Yeah, I posted the issue as well. So.
Oh, yeah, I just posted the same thing.
I have copied over the previously discussed points on the things that are shared from the last meeting that we held and this one. That way we don't have, so that way all that's captured here as well.
Yeah, we had a few. I think a few of these are repeats. I bumped Robert's issue up to the top of the agenda since that's the newest one, and I think there's some good points to talk about there. So maybe we can start with that. Do you want to do a quick intro for the stream? I think we're just to.
Sure. All right. Hello, everybody. We are going to start the Web Server Frameworks team meeting. Today is April 30th. And yeah, the links are all included in the GitHub issue. So let's get started. The first agenda item is issue number 41, HTTP response does not emit error on premature close. And I will let Robert, I believe it is, take this off.
Yeah, sure. It's actually the incoming message. On the client side is the response, on the server side is the request object. So our request and response objects in the HTTP API are supposed to be stream-like, or interchangeable as streams. And we do have a significant difference in the HTTP API is that when there's a problem with the stream, it emits an abort. I can hear myself. Somebody has a round.
Can everybody just make sure they're muted just in case? Yeah, awesome.
Perfect. So when it comes to the HTTP incoming message, we kind of have to have special handling of it because it emits an aborted event instead of an error event that you would usually expect in a stream API. So you can't just send it to a function that expects a stream and expect it to work unless that function knows that sometimes somebody might input a HTTP stream here and I have to listen to the aborted event as well. Now, we tried fixing this for the client side in Node.js. I think I'll link the PR. And of course, the problem here is breaking the ecosystem. I think Matteo suggested there that if there isn't an aborted event listener, then we enable the behavior where we emit an error instead. But of course, that will, even there's a risk of breaking the ecosystem, especially if you don't listen to the aborted event nor the error event. And then basically, if you get into this case, it would just crash the process. So we kind of got stuck there on the client side. On the server side, maybe there's more possibilities to resolve this. I'm unsure. I think Doug mentioned that frameworks usually don't register handlers in the same tick as the request arrives in. So maybe we could enable this behavior when the stream is activated or unpaused. So if there's no aborted listener, then emit an error if it dies. I'm unsure. Another alternative I was considering is emit the aborted and emit an error, but make it so the error does not cause an unhandled exception in this specific case. As
you can emit error only if there is an error listener to some extent, but there is a question of if somebody actually wants the behavior of the process crashing, then you are kind of, keep adding snowflakes to snowflakes. And that's kind of where we got in this spot from the beginning. So
and also to add, I think Doug's point here is that a lot of this behavior was an adaptation to old Node behavior. So if there's a way that we can move forward and then get the popular libraries to shift back to registering in the first tick, I think that's also a reasonable outcome, which would avoid the problem Doug was pointing out of it happening before the frameworks really hook in. Does that make sense? Because I think the whole conversation around what Doug was saying is really just like, well, yeah, in 0.10 we had to do these weird things, but like we don't really have to do those anymore.
Yep.
Right.
Well, there is also, it's in any case it will be a Semver major.
Yep, absolutely.
So, and these will target node 15 at best,
Yep.
and then do you plan to target 0 to 10 still with Express 5? No, this is an important question.
I gotta laugh at that. No,
this is an important question.
We'll be, as soon as whatever it is on the day of, whatever the supported versions are on the day of release is what will be targeted. And our goal is to have no longer than a year between major releases moving forward. So at that point, we'll be all caught up and we won't have this issue anymore.
So that would be that it's as long as these can be that you can support both Node 10, hopefully, and 15. You don't have to do that anymore, essentially, in Express 5, right? So it will mean that Express 4 cannot run on Node 15 and Node 16 and going forward.
Yeah, which will be a perfectly fine. I mean, it'll be end of life by then. Or we'll make whatever adjustments we need to make to it. Let's hope it's end of life. My point is we'll handle that. I think to Doug's point there, we can do. I think he's saying we can make changes to adapt even to this in the current major branches. I don't see him bringing up anything that would be like, impossible for us to fix.
My only concern in emitting error on request for this case, it's that then you will need to set 2 error handlers.
You mean on the response and one on the response and one on the request?
Yes. That's my only, that's my fundamental issue with the request response model, but that I don't agree with in general, but that's it's probably the topic of the next point or something, but that was.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, the coupling between the request and response.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So that's the only thing that it leaves me a little bit cautious.
An option is to leave it as it is. It just makes things a little bit more brittle when it comes to using generic streams, libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the reason why I want to do it. So it's just.
And I do notice, I do look around a little bit of the libraries like HTTP something where people forget to register an aborted handler and they assume they'll get an error. Because
yeah, totally.
On the other direction, you do get an error and not an aborted.
Yeah, I would just do it. So.
But I would suggest then that I'll make a PR on the server side at least, and we can continue this conversation there if everybody finds this worth working towards.
No, it is for me.
Yeah.
Is it going to break other parts of the ecosystem, do you think, or is it mostly the server frameworks that?
I mean,
it's going to break people who are using raw HTTP, right? I mean, because it is a breaking change, but it'll be in a Semver major in that. So.
I think it's a bigger problem on the client side, with HTTP client request, in terms of breaking the ecosystem. On the server side, yeah, the major web server frameworks, we have to make sure, handles it properly. But yeah.
I'm just thinking, even like an assembler major, I mean, we avoid doing things which are going to cause large things, a large amount of things to break, right?
The only thing that we could do is to do it, like to emit an error only if there is an error listening.
Yeah, that was the option. I also, emit an error if it doesn't crash the process.
Essentially, yes.
Is there?
Which
Sorry,
is
go ahead.
probably not bad.
That would actually, I think that would keep things working that exist, and would make the generic case also working. So.
Okay, that makes sense. The only other thing I was wondering is if there's enough of these different things that there's 3, 4, 5, 10 things we want to change, which each are gonna cause grief to some people. Is there any sense in doing something like an option, like you can opt into wanting the behavior to be the old way or the new way, right? And use that as a way to transition.
James suggested the same thing in another PR. I've suggested it in different other contexts in the past, but I've kind of evolved on that opinion, because you add that flag, and then you want to fix more stuff, from that flag and onwards. Do you add another flag, that you bump up the number, or,
I would try and cast it as you opt into you kind of opt into the new approach, and so if you're gonna opt into that, you accept you've got to update. Or
I don't think it's going to work with an opt-in. Opt-in are useless.
The code is going to be unmaintainable after a while.
Yeah,
that's the other. I mean, I understand that too. Like it definitely causes grief on that side, but just exploring whether.
I would not do it. I would, if we decide we do it, and whatever, we deal with it.
Yeah, but I really like your suggestion there to only emit error if it doesn't crash it. That sounds.
Well, if there is a listener, so if you check if there is, you check if there is a listener. If there is, then emit it. If there isn't, then we don't. So essentially, we don't crash the process. But if somebody is watching for it, they got notification.
And that would make.
Then in the future, add a deprecation there to that behavior in favor of crashing.
Yeah,
we could add a print a warning if there's no error.
I would make it. I would do it step by step. So I would before adding this thing, then maybe in the version after.
And that's kind of what got me thinking about the opt-in is would anything I want to know about, I want to crash on this kind of situation, not just this situation, but crash me on any kind of situation like this, so that if there was a new one in the future, you would just add it in. I mean, maybe nobody would use it, but
it's I would it would be nobody will I wouldn't, I don't think somebody would use it. Yeah. So from my point is the best thing would be first 15 emit if there is a listener, maybe 16 do deprecation warning on aborted potentially, and then drop it the way the after if we think it's necessary, or even if we can even think that the just erroring when there is nothing is actually fine. So it might just be fine.
Would you consider this for both the client and the server side?
Yeah, I would just keep the same behavior.
Yep.
I would if we do it, we should be I don't want to have more the last ifs we have in that code. There's already a mess, so it's I would just do the same on both. So I would, to some extent, it's probably easier to get a single PR with both changes and then say, hey, so we don't have to discuss the same opinions twice and the same objection twice. Right. From an objection optimization perspective, there will be people that will object to that, and then we already know them. we know the list of them. At least that's my list. There's a list of.
And the worst case, you'll get one approved, but not the other.
Exactly. That's what I don't want. Okay,
Exactly.
So possibly two commits on the same PR so that they're logically separated,
Yeah.
but at least it's on the same PR. So because then we need to debate both of them for a month. Instead, we just debate one for a month, and then we could get landed.
Right. Cool. I'll take care of this, and then we can take it from there.
Nice.
Great. Sounds good, and we're right on time. So last comments for this one, and then we can move on to our next agenda point.
I'm good.
All right, cool. On to the next one. So the next agenda item we have is issue number 32, improved set header and set cookie experience. We discussed this one in length at the last meeting, and I'll quickly review what some of the core points were from that. The first thing is we want some sort of better support for headers and predominantly cookies in Node Core. But what was discussed is that we should not create more work for the core team if we're not going to commit to contributing ourselves. And furthermore, there are already existing HTTP related security issues that we should be trying to help out with before we potentially create more of them by introducing this layer of header handling. So one of the action items was for frameworks, the framework teams, to ask their contributors to look into contributing back to Node Core some more, either on HTTP or in the security group. On another note, though, we identified that the JS HTTP library has done a lot of good work on managing headers and cookies. And there is some breakaways that we had about a specific append header issue, a set cookie header discussion, and then the parsings of these things. So I will open the floor up to this agenda item.
I can just start here with, there has been no progress on my side since the last meeting, but I think I would really like to hear Matteo and Robert's opinion, since I don't think either of you were on the call last time. The concern that Michael brought up, which was, so like we have a few additions that we think would be like pretty straightforward to make. Like an append header would be great for the set cookie situation, right? Because right now we just have to hack around appending headers, and Node Core doesn't have right, if you need to set multiple cookies, just to make sure we're all on the same page there, multiple cookie headers. So adding that would be great. I think it'd be pretty straightforward. It'd be something that this team could take on. Michael's concern, which I think is really valid, is that if we go and start, up leveling some of these things into Node Core, there's already a sort of lack of eyes looking at some of the HTTP stuff now, and there's a lot of work to be done there. Okay, go ahead. Sorry,
I want to give. I think this is important. I'm going to tell my perspective. And what
I would like to hear. So I can
what I've learned dealing with Node Core HTTP header. Essentially, my experience, but also Thomas probably, the Fastify experience is don't use it. Just use write-add. Everything, all that stuff is completely half broken anyway. It's just a total mess. So the only way to have a performance, also it used to cause some deopt every time you touch the set header. So essentially it was just such a bad API that because of legacy reason, whatever. So, and that we couldn't change. So the only way we could, make something that was even remotely fast was completely sidestep all of it and just use write-add, which I am pretty sure that's also what Hap is doing, completely sidestepping all of it because it's just unworkable. They literally unworkable. Okay, so because of all the problems that you are mentioning. Okay, so there is.
So it sounds like maybe there's some bigger picture things to look at, is like, what is the future of header handling in Node Core?
Yeah.
I mean, in general, like if there's a way we can take what you all are doing in Fastify and bring that in with a new set of APIs, like that.
Oh, like I would not, like, literally, from my point of view, I would, if it was me, I will just remove the set header. Like that was the overall problem caused because the response as this set header thing that then you need to read and you need to append to and you need to manage, and there's a lot of state that is ingrained in the response. And from my point of view, all of that is I would call it unnecessary and very legacy. So
maybe so could we maybe refactor this issue then to be less focused on the append header and set cookie type part, and really look at what we think a better API around header management would look like? Because
yeah,
if we did that, then it would just supersede this issue entirely.
Yeah,
right?
that would be, from my point of view, like my experience in trying to do that, so set header works reasonably okay if you are using Node Core API directly, but it does not really serve the framework user well. Because as a framework, you want to be able to read those headers as much as possible. Like you need to, there's a back and forth between when you start assembling a response, you need to check, oh, I'm sending out this header. I'm sending out this now. I need to do certain stuff if there is this, if the user does set this header or not.
Or even for deserialization, you are going to check the content type each time.
Yes. So there is those things are, and that API was literally like something that was not. From my point of view, it has a lot of quirks because it was born in so long ago. So I'm not saying that we should drop it, but it is you have get header names, get headers as a header sent, remove a header. Look at this. Okay. Like, I don't know. I'm just like, I've seen that the only and flash headers as well, which is actually super interesting. My overall experience, and of course there is the unused ad trailers, which is my best. Nobody uses those, but it is the one of the best. So I don't know. I'm just of the opinion that like not using that like as a framework, not using those kind of give a better using experience than using those in terms of consistency and performance, because some of those behaviors are, awkward at best. And the fact that, if you look at the implementation, you see why they are like slowish and why that some of the stuff are non-optimizable by using them. So, and in fact, you can actually have a more idiomatic behavior by just, managing it as a map yourself and then passing it in. So, like, to be
Out
honest,
of curiosity,
I have to drop in 2 minutes. I just want to ask, is there a link we could drop in the notes to some of the work y'all have been doing in Fastify around this so that I can explore it and then maybe make a proposed new issue on top of this that would have like some reference links? I didn't mean to cut you off. I just don't want to have it go over.
I'll look it up. I have no clue. This was so long ago, to be honest, that I was.
Yeah, there should be a couple of pull requests.
If
there
you
is a
drop
cap-
them in the notes or in that issue, I'll definitely follow up and see if I can put together a more sane proposal for the future.
Out of curiosity, if we are talking about refactoring this API, will it make sense to use the same headers API is present nowadays in the browsers? So the one you can find by writing headers MDN, which has the append, get, delete, and
Which is
everything
slow.
else.
You said
But
it's
yeah.
slow.
I'm just conscious that's slow. Like I'm just, every 9 out of times it's just slow. But
I think it would be worth making sure that if we can make it fast, align, with those kind of standards. I think having a consistent API there is valuable.
Yeah, exactly. Since there's a lot of talking about both the modules, but many things about standardizing the browser environment, node environment. Maybe it will make sense to investigate this thing.
One of the
drop, but if you all post some links to anything that you all are doing in Fastify on that, I will follow up. Probably.
Yeah, I'm putting on the notes.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you, Wes.
Later.
But it sounds to me, Matteo, that you would like to deprecate this API.
From my point of view, yes.
Yeah.
If you look at if you ever checked out how it's implemented, like there is this basic problem that headers can be both uppercase and lowercase,
yep.
and then that API all the time converse between them,
yep.
which is so much of extra work. While if you're writing a framework, 9 out of 10, you don't need any of that extra work. So essentially, if you are developing a framework, you want to actually code the things well yourself so that you don't need any of that, and then possibly offer an API to the users that actually does that sanitization. But there is a gap in between, and like the way what we have seen that just don't sidestepping it completely gives a 10% more throughput just just because of that. To be honest, it doesn't.
In terms of, I mean, if we're going to deprecate it, we all have to have an alternative, right?
No, that's the point. There's no just use Bright, but then you can't because the world is using this and it's full. It's on every freaking tutorial.
Yeah.
So that's the key problem of you can't remove it ever.
But for me, it's probably my thing, but doc deprecating is a way to discourage using it without actually removing it.
Yeah, totally. But still, it's less.
But the tutorial thing is a very good point. Usually people don't look at documentation, just copy paste from the tutorial. Well-known problem, I fear.
But then you got to get those updated too, right? But that can take a long time. That's all. You gotta if you want to get it done, it probably just needs to be looked at as a very long-term.
Yeah, so that's why
fine.
I'm not. I don't. So that's why I don't think we can remove it. But what I would recommend from Express and possibly every framework that can think of is, I would not propose we make changes and improve that API, because from my perspective, it's, you should be, as a framework, you should, my opinion is, well, we don't care, because essentially it's a bad API to start with.
But is your main problem with the API the performance part, or the functionality part as well?
Well, it's both, because you have this problem of, I want to set arrays, I want to do this, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And there is, I want to append a cookie, I want to do that. There is so many special cases and special snowflakes around headers that you cannot provide a clear access way that is agnostic. So all headers are special snowflakes. Most headers are special snowflakes. So your framework, if you're developing a framework or a library, you need to know that cookies can be appended, but content length can't. And unless we put all that logic within core, then say having a set header or an append header does not make any sense. Because if append header implements the cookie logic and then they come up with another way to appending things to another, what do we do? I don't know if you passed me. It's completely. That's why I'm talking. This is just a bad API. It's just one of those API that look very nice and cool because headers look like a map, but it's not a map, because everything is not that it's a string. Because if it's a cookie, you need a special behavior for a cookie. If it's a content length, you need special behavior for a content length. If it's, you know, the content type is nice because on the content type, for example, you can have application/JSON, but you can have application/JSON colon the UTF-8. Now, those two means the exact same thing, but browser in Japan do not recognize the one without UTF-8. Hooray! Sorry to be bitching about, you know, those are the real world problems, right? So that's why I'm saying that the headers management cannot.
You had lots of fun with this, haven't you?
Yeah, like, you know, developing a web, when you start developing a web framework, like that was one of the ways to learn all the quirks of that, how bad our API is. From my point of view, it's just.
So another quick question, if we go back to the web frameworks, would it be possible to, you know, extract parts of, I think that's maybe it was some of the part, what's his name was, you know, extracting this out into a library that, you know, the different web frameworks can use and work on together. And then maybe at some point that could go into core.
Yeah, so that was previously discussed. I think that's what JS HTTP was handling. Apparently they've implemented a really nice like header management thing.
Yes.
But it's the idea of like, should we just keep JS HTTP as its own module and recommend users to go and use that? Or do we want to try and get JS HTTP into Node Core, which I don't really think is a great solution personally, but that's, I think, a part of the larger discussion on where should this live.
Sorry, where is the headers thing on?
Just to continue from that point, though, I prefer having things outside of core, but if we want to deprecate the API, then it goes back to the question: do we need to have an alternative in core in order to deprecate it? Doc deprecate it, not remove it.
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that, but that
well,
is.
To be honest, you in this case you would. So essentially what you can do is you can have a headers object, and I don't know which API we're talking about because I couldn't quickly find it. But if we have an headers object that knows all the things about the headers, but it knows all the quirks, okay? So it knows about cookies. It knows about it has a lot of logic that understands the content of the headers, not just keys and values, but it's meaningful. Then it's probably makes sense to have it, but it needs to be a proper like headers object, and then you put stuff into that, and then get stuff out, and then ask, oh, give me an object, and then you can just pass it to your write add, and that's just pass that add object in. So that would be my. It's possible to add it. It's probably some code that can also live in the JS HTTP thingy. It's probably the same. I couldn't find something like that right now. So if this is there, you said, Thomas, there is an MDN thing with headers?
Yes, let me share it in the chat.
HTTP, it's a web API. Interesting.
Yes, basically when you send a HTTP request with fetch on the browser side, you can either pass a plain object or create a header object with this global API.
Just a quick follow-up while you guys are reading that. In terms of maintaining the Node core, would it be if we have a new API, could we implement the old API in terms of the new API so we can remove some legacy stuff?
Yeah, possibly. I would think that it would be fine. Yeah. Because from my point of view, this actually looks pretty nice. I would actually recommend we add this.
Sorry, you mean this header subject?
Yeah, it seems pretty nice.
Yeah, it seems pretty nice to me as well, also because it looks really like a map
Yeah,
it
it
should
looks
also
like,
be very, very fast.
yeah, but it's
it
not,
also had the, it also adds the append method, for
Yes.
example.
yes. Yes. So, but it quacks like a map, but probably not a map. But yeah, it's because the way that double thing works is kind of, you know, I would love to test it on the browser and see the moment you append what it returns out. But overall, I would actually prefer to have it as this type of thing, so that, you know, it's just tiny step towards more web compatibility and whatever, and essentially recommend, hey, this is the object, pass this to right head,
That's
and
it.
off you
Yeah.
and off you go. Bye. Okay. And I would, you know, I would kind of like this type of approach, and then we can possibly use this internally if it's not turbo slow. So that's my only concern is here, that it will be like this type of API can be really slow. That's my only problem. So there might be a fast path that you can actually get, so that you sidestep the public API and just deep into the internal data.
Cool. All right. So that sounds good. This is great progress on this issue. I'm going to say we should move on to our next agenda item. But the two main action items for here is we definitely want to talk about this again, but we should
Totally.
restructure it.
Note that this API definitely know about all the HTTP headers that are possible. So it tells you. It does. So all the headers method will throw a type error if you try to pass in a reference to a name that isn't a valid HTTP header name.
Just a comment for the notes. How does this apply to the trailers?
But it will be kind of the same.
Yeah.
It's just a trailer is just a header at the end. So,
yeah.
But then some of them cannot be set. So whatever, even funnier. It's one of those funny ones. Just don't support it. Like in Fastify, we don't support it. So it's just way better that way.
You don't do trailers in Fastify?
We don't do trailers in Fastify.
Right.
We decided nobody asked for it. If somebody asked for it, they will send a pull request for it. So likely we will have trailers. It comes with this type of mood these days of, you know, if you want a feature, you implement it. Otherwise, don't.
Cool. All right. So definitely going to maybe make a new issue or rework the current one to further that discussion in a follow-up meeting, or maybe we can start making some progress on that investigation. But I'm going to move forward onto the next agenda item, which is discussing modules in the CITGM group. This is issue number 35. We didn't have any key takeaways the last time we talked about it. So I'm just going to reread the main block that this one's about, and then we can have a discussion here about it. On the Express TC meeting, we discussed testing for our dependencies, especially for version 5, and we're thinking we need a better way to integrate groups of modules to the CITGM. What do other frameworks do for this? I'll open the floor with that.
I think the best person to talk about it's not here right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I would be curious, you know, what the maintenance working group, you know, ends up with in their discussion.
Well, the key part of the problem is that Express dependencies are not in Canary. So somebody needs to take an action item to actually add all of them. That's it. And that, considering the fact that Express is the worst offender of all in that sense. Okay. So it's not, because it uses so many legacy behaviors and it's such a breadth of behavior of Node versions that it's very easy to break, because they might rely on something that's completely like Node 0.8, which is, by the way, in Express 4 still run on Node 0.8. So that is that.
Okay. So
sounded like that might fix itself though with 5, but I guess. Let's see.
Well, yes and no, because the code, it's a code base that evolves from that point. So I'm not necessarily certain that it would, because certain things that there is a good chance. So the key fact is that we probably want to test also multiple versions. So we want to test the Express 4, the version that is dependent on the Express 4, and the version that is dependent on to Express 5, which is probably 2 different versions at this point.
Okay, so I think due to the nature of this one being maybe very Express focused, and it was initially proposed by Wes himself, we'll probably defer it to another meeting so he can be here to talk about it. So I will move right into the next agenda item, which is the Stream versus Request API. This is number 19. Our last discussion, we talked a lot about HTTP2, HTTP3. We talked about how like, why aren't we seeing more apps built with these technologies? The answer was that a lot of the services that you would need to do those things effectively are not freely available or are not like just well documented enough. We had a couple of requests. This includes a GraphQL HTTP3 example. There's a request for the benefits on these like APIs like 2 and 3, etc. And there was also a request for better communication on existing apps, like things in the wild, which was actually one of the action items of last week, was to ask around and see if we can get any insight on that. We know that Cloudflare and Google have publicly done some things in that field. I asked around internally at Microsoft, but didn't really get anywhere. Honestly, I was probably asking in the wrong places because I don't know a whole lot of people yet, but I will continue to do so. And I think we should encourage everyone else to continue to do so. And we also talked about Compat Layers. What is HTTP3 going to have one? Do we need to help build one? When are we going to stop using Compat Layers? And yeah, so that was all that we previously discussed. And I will open the floor to conversation about this point.
Okay, I would probably a tiny bit of context that's probably needed in here. It's why the Compat layer and the Stream API come to be. I am 50% responsible for it, or probably 100% responsible for it. So you can probably insult me, and because it's probably the source of this problem. So it was, I think, 2017, around something like that. And we were in Austin, Michael. It was at the conference in Austin.
Yep, that was, I forget which year, but yeah.
I don't remember.
Back.
It was a few years back. I was at the conference in Austin, and I was talking with James, and he was trying to implement HTTP2 at the time, and with HTTP, and then we were trying to figure out a way to actually do error handling and error management on HTTP2 and at that point in time it became extremely clear that implementing the error handling model of HTTP1, the request and response things, because of the issue that we talked like 10 minutes before, would not make any sense for HTTP2, where you have essentially bidirectional streams from the get-go. That's essentially it. So James tried to implement something that worked, couldn't. It was basically to some extent unworkable. So they destroy that. Now the problem for that was it was leaking memory like there was no tomorrow. Okay, so that was the source of the problem. And adding the streams, adding that API, that the 2 layers was in fact have caused adding that layer in between made able that we could ship HTTP2 in the first place, so that we'd actually build that on top. We could be the Compat layer on top, because the problem is one of the things that was missing for that compat layer to exist is that there is a socket API that in HTTP 101 is actually TCP socket, and in HTTP 2 is the HTTP 2 stream, and that is, it actually mimic the same relationship. If we didn't do that, we couldn't have shipped the compat layer. We couldn't have been compatible at all because that bit will not be there. And that bit, it's used by certain stuff in the ecosystem. So it's...
I think if I remember the discussion, it was the concern that like nobody's moved from the compat layer to the stream-based one. And if HTTP 3 is going to require stream, like we're not even on the path to where people or any code that's out there will be using HTTP 2, much less HTTP 3 and so forth. And what's the path forward?
I don't think we should worry about it right now. At least that's my 2 cents. We have so many problems in shipping HTTP 3 that don't worry.
But even so, like even for HTTP 2, I guess the comment was like none of the frameworks actually use the stream-based.
No, you can't. Well, with Fastify we could, okay? We just don't because nobody has put in the effort to do it. So right. in Fastify we could, but we actually don't because it's probably a waste right now.
Yes, but in any case, as long as you have it's a general rule, I think, as long as you have a compatibility API that is not causes that much drop in performance, adding a very big amount of code for supporting the stream-based API is an effort that no one wants to undertake.
Exactly. Like there's no, but the point is there is not a want for that.
Right.
Because HTTP 2 is not supported in the ecosystem as a topic. Not by Node, but by the middlemen. So the only way you ship HTTP 2 in production is by buying Nginx Plus, essentially. And
yes, this is what was.
So, it's and then the basic approach is you just use a CDN and upload the file there, and then you use the benefit of HTTP 2 in there. So the problem is that the load balancers and everybody has completely dropped the ball on implementing it for end users, for in between. So it's a no-go. The only real consumer of HTTP 2 is gRPC, and gRPC is already using the Streams API. So it's.
So I think what you're saying is like there's no demand, like there's no reason to invest the effort to make the switch at this point, and even HTTP 3, which potentially could change things, is far enough ahead that it's really not a priority.
Considering the major blocker of HTTP 3 adoption,
right?
What the major blocker is, I would be very, very like up until that is resolved, I would not be concerned here. When that is resolved, then we are. So to be clear, I don't know if you're aware of the major blocker for HTTP 3, which is Michael definitely is, but I don't think. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is it requires a patched version of OpenSSL to run, which is more or less a no-go for everybody to use it. Like nobody wants to run OpenSSL with a patch on top. Like it will give scares to most people doing any security work.
Sorry, Matteo, you mean specifically for Node, or is
no, for specifically for
everybody?
For everybody. Yes.
Okay. And it's more that the support isn't going to get into OpenSSL for a while.
They said they will add that API in 2 years.
Wow.
So essentially, there is the problem is that the way Nginx has worked around this and will able to ship HTTP 3 is by using boring SSL, which ships with those APIs already in. also those API are coming to OpenSSL 3, which will be a significant effort to refactor Node to run out, but that's something that might unlock us. But again, given the significant level of effort needed to ship OpenSSL, to ship quick, and HTTP 3 on top, I would not. We are talking about years worth of engineering focus, engineering time. So I would not even worry about it, to be honest.
Just to go back a little bit there, I mean, since we have this problem with engines, etc., the people that do kind of want to use HTTP2, the company I work included, we kind of end up with using the HTTP Node.js to build our own reverse proxy.
Yeah, so I built one myself. So yeah, I built one. I built one myself. So I don't know if there is some code in my just a second.
So Ronag, you built a HTTP2 to HTTP reverse proxy using Node? Is that...
There is a NPM package, Node HTTP2 proxy, and that I was building while HTTP2 was being, still experimental.
Oh, I didn't know you built one. I built one as well. So
I can. I don't know if I should. I can mail you that, Matteo, if you want to take a look.
Yeah. So mine is. So if you look, in Fastify HTTP proxy, support both HTTP. It does HTTP1 to HTTP2, HTTP2 to HTTP1, HTTP2 to HTTP2. It does all possible combinations. Oh, nice. I didn't know this.
Yeah. Mine is much simpler and as simple as possible. But that kind of goes back to the reason I raised this question a little bit is where to put the effort. The HTTP2 Compat layer, even though it works, there is an issue. I think we have an issue with a long to-do list of differences with HTTP1. And I've tried to, improve, make them even more consistent, but it takes a lot of effort. And the question is where to put the effort. Should we put effort into making web frameworks use the Stream API because that's where we want to go? Or should we put the effort into making the Compat layers even better?
Okay, I would give you my 2 cents.
Yeah.
In none.
Neither. Okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
I don't know. That's my 2 cents. I don't want to be so negative, but it's unless you have specific bugs. Like if you have specific bugs, go ahead and fix them. Okay. In fairness, that's.
It's possible to make workarounds.
Yeah, no, but if you have a bug, just go ahead. If you have a bugs in your code or whatever, go ahead and send a PR and fix it. It's just, should we put effort in doing a campaign on either education or other? For me, it's not worth it. But I don't. Essentially, it's not worth it right now, to be honest. Okay, if Express want to say we want to support HTTP2, or there is Pika.js that wants to use HTTP2 for web development. I don't know. I'm just joking here, but I'm not. To some extent, I'm not. Okay, so it might be worthwhile reaching out and understanding why they're not really using it, but part of it is related to the fact that it actually needs a certificate to run, and people don't understand SSL. So, if you want to make HTTP more easy to adopt, would be add utility to generate certificates, but we added those. So just document them and do a few blog posts on how easy it is to use HTTP2. Like to some extent, it's the biggest challenge is for the web is on the crypto and a bunch of other things sides. So I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, it sounds like the conversation's going back to sort of where it went the last time, which was like, we've identified why people don't want to use HTTP2, but then there's also the reasons why people would want to use it. So then we discuss, maybe we should better documentation or whatnot. But you brought up a great question on why people aren't using it. And we could ask some of like the main frameworks themselves, maybe to get their insight, like Pika or like maybe Vercel, I think they're called now, with like the Next.js, like maybe there's something there, like server-side rendering, if there's something that could be improved, you know, those might be groups that we should reach out to and ask about, because they could have potentially good reasons for doing this.
Yeah, if they want, so the key question is, do you want better HTTP2 support? That would be a key question for Node users. If we do, then we can, you know, potentially, but to some extent, I wouldn't ship it. Like, we added it in Fastify, and if you look at Fastify docs, we still call it as experimental to some extent, because I have never put it in production, literally never.
So I guess what you're saying is we should put our effort into making HTTP 1, you know, as good as possible, and then we'll see what happens with HTTP 3 in a year or two.
Exactly.
I think so.
From my point of view, the biggest advantage of having HTTP2 in core is that we can ship gRPC without a native binary, which is to some extent, but the Stream API is actually great already for that, so no problem. So essentially, that's it.
Because
Really.
yeah, the things you know, make me think about the maintenance cost and effort of HTTP2 in Node in general.
Yeah, so to be honest, that is kind of a broader question, and it's good to raise the question. I know the cost, and probably not super worth the value right now in terms of why we want to do it, but I also like the fact that it's there, because it actually simplifies a lot of deployments and a lot of things. So it did not get popular. So yeah, and me too, Michael. So yeah.
Okay. Yep. So let's.
Hello.
Did we lose him?
This is now. There's only one more agenda item we didn't get to today, but that's okay. It's just adding users essentially. So I'll say thank you everyone for coming today and chatting. We can continue these discussions in the issues, and we can end the stream now. I think that's it. So
Very much.
thanks everyone.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one. Bye.